Good morning and welcome to channel 112. This morning on the show we've got myself, Shanaj Jamal, Nicole and Dylan, our special guest from Australia's Aphasia Association. Just to give you an overview of our segment today, we'll be discussing all things aphasia. Dylan is going to chat with us about his recent case study that compares and contrasts the lived experience of Derek and Simon. Anyone at home, you can pop on over to our website www.finestalignedhealthradio.com and you will find our podcast with some visual slides with additional information to guide you through today's topic as we are limited on time. So what is aphasia?
Well, aphasia is a condition characterised by the inability to produce speech and or comprehend language as a result of brain damage.
Yeah, I heard it can commonly occur after a stroke. A stroke can block or rupture blood vessels in the brain. The loss of blood to the brain then deprives the cells from oxygen and leads to infraction.
The severity of aphasia can range from mild to severely debilitating. Those with aphasia may be affected by one element of language, such as the inability to retrieve names of objects, the inability to string a sentence together, or to read a simple task.
The National Aphasia Association further explains that aphasia typically mostly affects the left hemisphere, but then can also affect the right hemisphere of the brain. Therefore, the degree of disability depends on the extent of damage to particular areas affected of the brain.
So I heard there are 4 common classifications. Dylan, can you further explain this?
Global aphasia is the most severe form with large damage to the left hemisphere, resulting in impaired expressive and receptive skills. It is also more likely to affect women.
The second type is broker's aphasia, most commonly found in the frontal lobe of the left hemisphere. Although there may be good language and reading comprehension, speech is severely reduced. Short utterances are common and described as effortful during speech. It is most likely to affect women and is often found to be more prevalent in younger people. For those viewers following online, you'll be able to see an example of descriptive skills from someone with broker's aphasia.
Thirdly, we have Rennick's aphasia. This is damage in the temporal lobe on the left hemisphere. Production of speech is minimally affected in comparison to comprehension. We see jargon come into play with minimal understanding for the listener. Our viewers online will now be able to see an example of descriptive skills of someone with Rennick's aphasia.
Anomic aphasia is just a mild form, where people can still speak and read adequately, but they can't find words such as verbs or nouns.
So of course we would like to know who is the target population.
So apart from those who are affected by stroke, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians are known to experience higher rates of aphasia at a younger age. It also has the ability to affect a variety of age groups, from young children to the elderly. In particular, middle age and beyond are more likely to acquire aphasia when the prevalence of stroke is at a higher rate, and men and women equally proportioned.
As we can see in this pie chart, 42% of cases that speech pathologists deal with are with aphasia.
Now I'll give you an insight into specific figures regarding the incidence and prevalence of aphasia. Annually, 15 million strokes occur worldwide. However, it is difficult to precisely indicate the incidence of aphasia. It is thought to be unknown as the collection of data focuses on the primary disability rather than the symptoms. Additionally, there is much debate about what conditions should be labelled as aphasia. For example, some believe that neurological damage of dementia should be a form of aphasia, as this impairs one language. Dylan's now going to go into more specific figures.
It can be estimated that the incidence is approximately 1/3 of people experiencing aphasia post-stroke. In 2012, about 25,000 Australian males and 23,000 Australian females had experienced a stroke. A recent Australian study reported that 37.2% of stroke admissions to the Royal Perth Hospital over a 12-month period had been diagnosed with aphasia. Therefore, it can be estimated that the prevalence in 2012 was 18,253 new cases in Australia. It was then estimated in 2012 that between 93,000 and 156,000 Australians were living with the effects of aphasia.
Now that we have provided an overview of aphasia, let's delve into the lived experiences of 2 Indigenous Australians. So Dylan, you have been very involved with this study. Can you tell us a bit about their background?
Derek is a 63-year-old Noongar man from the southwest corner of Western Australia. When Derek was 34 years old, he experienced a stroke. He has a moderate comprehension deficit. His verbal output was a characteristic of broker's aphasia, and currently he lives with his sister. Derek's experience living with aphasia appeared to be seemingly a pleasant one. When asked about his aphasia, Derek did not appear to be particularly concerned. He denied any difficulties and dismissed most questions, stating, "Good, 2026 better." Our other guest was Simon, a 53-year-old Yamachi man who had experienced a stroke 6 months prior to the interview. Although Simon's language skills appeared to be relatively good, he was initially diagnosed with moderately severe aphasia that had resolved relatively quickly. He sometimes experiences difficulty explaining things and saying the right word, often confusing pronouns such as he and she. Simon's experience living with aphasia appears to be quite mixed. He has received ongoing care and support from the hospital, speech-language pathology services, and family, and he explained how he still experiences frustration by his difficulties. Similar to Derek, Simon lives with his sister.
Some factors contributing to Derek's lived experience include hobbies, independent lifestyle, and a sense of belonging in his family. Above all, Derek identified himself as a painter and singer. He expressed pride in his work and told us how he has a painting hanging in the major art gallery in Western Australia. These hobbies give Derek meaning in his life and a sense of identity, not as someone with a restrictive communication disorder, but rather one who has a range of creative interests. It is through these interests that Derek has found an outlet to express himself. Furthermore, Derek's positive lived experience with aphasia can be attributed to his independent and busy lifestyle. Derek explained how he keeps himself busy by travelling around Perth, meeting and socialising with new people. He also catches trains and taxis independently. Lastly, Derek reports that he has integrated into his family life in the same way as any one of his family members. Ultimately, this sense of belonging has assured Derek that he is accepted wholeheartedly for who he is.
Simon's supportive environment, independence, and sense of frustration are 3 significant factors that have contributed to his lived experience with aphasia. Simon explained that his hospital experience and inclusion in family life have had a positive impact on his aphasia. When referring to the hospital, Simon explained, "I enjoyed it there. The feeling of just going down and talk to a lot of people." He emphasized the importance of knowing people in the hospital and not feeling isolated. Furthermore, Simon explained that many of his family members came to visit him in hospital, particularly his sister and son. This suggests that during his time in hospital, Simon was a part of a supportive family environment who wanted to truly care for him and encourage him during this time. Furthermore, Simon's independence and control over his own recovery has positively contributed to his lived experience with aphasia. He explained to us how he keeps busy and values the importance of staying connected. Initially, Simon was going to a speech-language pathologist. However, he experienced great difficulty in what he was taught to do, and so he took control and tried to help himself. He reads the newspaper each day and talks to his dog and birds to practice his speech. By taking control of his own recovery, Simon has been able to see significant improvements with his language. Additionally, it has given him a sense of confidence that he was able to help himself and not rely on others. Simon's sense of frustration has contributed to his experience in a negative way. When speaking about speech-language pathology services in hospital, Simon primarily reported feelings of frustration. As he explained, "Some parts I couldn't get. Got really hard that I couldn't do. So that was too frustrating. You feel, yeah, you're so useless in that." Simon also described feeling inadequate, that he was unable to do things that most children could do, which really affected his confidence. These factors tipped him over the edge at one point as he confessed to having suicidal thoughts.
Some similarities I gathered are they are both independent. Although living with their sisters, they do not rely on them for everything. Also, both men experienced a stroke at a relatively young age and both expressed how the support of their families has helped them in many ways.
I was able to identify some differences between Derek and Simon. Whilst Derek repeatedly identified himself as a painter and singer, Simon placed more emphasis on his role in the family. Derek did not mention any feelings of frustration associated with aphasia. This contrasts to Simon, who, as we mentioned earlier, reported negative feelings and at times suicidal thoughts due to decrease in his communication ability, where he was not as effective as once before. Lastly, Derek showed no evidence of seeking further treatment after his hospital experience, as he did not seem to be particularly concerned about missing fluent speech. This contrasts to Simon, who expressed that he was confident in directing his own recovery as he continued to try to improve his speech after the hospital, perhaps highlighting the fact that Simon placed a greater importance on recovery due to his feelings of uselessness.
Well, that, guys, concludes this morning's show. We hope you were engaged and that we've left you feeling far more knowledgeable on what aphasia is all about. The effect aphasia has on an individual varies. Not one person's journey is the same, and I think that this is the key thing that people need to understand when being a supportive system for someone with aphasia. For speech pathologists especially, interacting with aphasia patients, we need to remember to tailor to the individual's needs. Thank you for being on our show today, Dylan. Over and out. We hope to see you next time on Channel 112.